Hello, book lovers. I'm Peg, and welcome to my channel. Well, I'm here today finally to talk about the newly published, just this week, Provenance by Leckie. I had pre-ordered it, so when it was published on Tuesday, the 26th, I was able to wait for the mailman, and he could hand it right to me, and I could just started reading. I was so excited about it. Now, I've been talking about this coming out for several times in other videos, and I've also talked about Ann Leckie's previous works, the trilogy that she wrote called the Ancillary Series, which won many awards and has been much discussed on this and other science fiction venues. The main one I'll just refer to is the first one that won all the awards. Was called Ancillary Justice, and I have talked much about the problematic getting started in this book, in the whole trilogy. There's so much to get used to, and kind of some of the reasons I think people can't get into sci-fi is characters are very complex. Sometimes they take different bodies or whatever. But anyway, I've talked before about how this is very complex to get into, and I had to read it several times to really understand what was going on. But it was well worth it in the end, and it rightly deserved both the Hugo and the Nebula prizes for science fiction that it won. Okay, so I'll be referring to this as just the trilogy when I do some comparing here. Okay, as you see in my title, you don't have to have read those three to get into this one. In fact, I'm thinking if you haven't read any at all and you want to get started, I think you could start with this one and be much more pleased and at ease because of several things, which I'll say. First of all, the time frame in this. It is in the same world. It takes place in the same world as the trilogy, but it has all different characters. We're on a different planet, and you don't have to know about it. I mean, there are some references to the trilogy, which kind of helps in a way. If you're going to read the trilogy later, you'd have some idea what the different worlds are and the different characters. And I think this would be the perfect first book to read. Also, some things that I liked, that made this easier to approach were, one, the time frame, the way time is handled. In the other one, the trilogy, time was all mixed up. Every chapter would be a different time. I mean, it could be 1,000 years earlier or before, and because the characters lived that long, sometimes it would be the same character, so you couldn't tell which century it was by the character. It was very confusing. At the end, you can see why it was done, and it worked well, but it was hard for a first try if you're not used to that sort of stuff. Okay, this one is a straight sequential time frame, goes right through, does bring up a little history, but that's easy to understand what she's doing here. So this made it a lot easier to get into right off. The other thing that made this more easy to approach was the way the characters were done. In the trilogy, it's hard to explain, but some of the characters were many characters. Artificial intelligence could be the ship's intelligence became a person, and in some of them, and then became many people, and it was just the characters were really hard to understand exactly who they were or what they were or what their abilities were. But in this one, it's mainly human characters. There are a few artificial intelligences, which I'll talk about in a minute. And the interesting thing she does in the trilogy, she used all the feminine pronouns. She called it she, her, whatever. And then later on, it might mention, oh, that's definitely a man. So it's kind of hard to switch your mind after you're used to calling them her and she to accept the fact that it was man. In this one, she's developed this technique that's much more I think enables you to understand what she's saying and approach the non-binary world of gender. She calls all her personal pronouns of unknown people. Now, there a couple people are definitely men or women, but a lot of the characters, she always uses the pronoun e, as in, when she would say she or he, she says e, and when she would say them, she says em. There are no, she doesn't use personal pronouns, and that's much easier to get your mind thinking in the non-binary world, and you just begin to think of them as people, not he's or she's. I thought that was an excellent way to treat that. One of the things I really like about all Anne Leckie's books is her world building, as it's called, or setting. She makes it such a, even though it's strange and unusual, she makes the world seem so real. And this one, I'm not going to give any spoilers away, but one of the things she does is the particular planet that most of the action is on, there are boulders, natural boulders in the land of colored glass. These are different colored boulders of glass, evidently natural or who knows. But she describes these in a way that you can just picture, these colored glass, huge mountains around, and they use it for building material. So some of the houses are built of this colored glass, and her description of nighttime when the houses are all aglow in their different colors is really kind of well done. And I could, as I said, I could almost picture it. There's other things about her settings that I just like the way that's something I always notice, especially in sci-fi, is what they call the world building. And even if it's different or if it seems natural or makes me be able to picture it. Okay, one more thing I'm going to say about the characters in this book that are easier than the trilogy. That most of them are just single human characters, but they also have little artificial intelligences in the shape of spiders. I'm not. I think they're bigger than spiders, but they call them spider mechs for mechanicals, and this is so well done. I challenge you to not think that these spider mechs are just the cutest things ever, and she somehow is able to give them personalities. They have eyes on long stalks. I'm not sure how many eyes they have, but the way they roll their eyes around, or it's just, I think this is the excellent way to characterize it. They become actual people to me. Now, there is a tiny little bit of complexity in that sometimes real people's personality takes over the spider mechs, and the spider mech can actually be someone else. But it's well explained, and it's not that hard to get when that happens. So anyway, I thought this was a great book, and as I said, I think this would be a great one to start with. There's still a lot of complexity and layers in the story and politics, and you kind of need to keep track of different names of different groups of people. But with a little attention and a little work, you can certainly. I got a lot by just reading it once, which I didn't in the others. So anyway, hope you guys will give this a try. I'd love to hear what somebody else thinks about it. Thanks. Bye.